you have any last words before I destroy you?
You're ugly!
Welcome, everybody, to the end of the classic era of Deep Dive Zone, a Sonic review series for fans of all shapes and sizes. And I'm already lying to you, because this is the end of the classic era in that we're done with classic era games, and we're mostly done with classic era comics and TV shows. But there's been more classic Sonic content produced since then, and there's some more obscure stuff that we haven't covered yet. But just for now, we're going to talk a little bit in retrospect about the things that we enjoyed, the things we struggled with over the course of this show.
Yeah, it was interesting and varied array.
Very.
Even among the pieces of media, because obviously we covered shows, comics,
Right.
games, and a few other things that might not neatly fit in either of those categories. But even among each of those, there was certainly variation.
Yeah, I would say definitely that the games were our learning period. It was where we discovered both a lot of what we liked and disliked about the series, and a lot of our limitations and strengths and weaknesses when it comes to recording a show about them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as we get more into the Sonic Adventure arc here, we're going to take longer to cover each game. We are never again going to do anything like covering 5 Game Gear games in one episode, even if Game Gear games aren't that long.
Yeah, that was just too much.
Well, with the games in mind, what did we think about that experience?
I think it's hard to really give, for me at least, it's hard to give an overall, were they good, were they bad? Because there was such varying quality with the classic era.
Yeah, there was just so much stuff that I wasn't even aware of. So many games that I had never heard of, and I'm not even talking about the obscure ones necessarily, but I didn't realize how many 8-bit Sonic games there were, for instance.
Yeah.
I think that what this taught me above all else is that Sonic fans are full of shit when they talk about how everything was better in the classic days. Because you could probably say that Sonic 1, 2, 3, and CD are better than, like, Shadow 06, Secret Rings, and Unleashed or something.
Sure.
That I would agree with that, but there are so many classic games that were just either disappointing or outright frustrating, and it's like, I feel frustration at Sonic 06, but then I can also play Sonic Rush Adventure in the same year as Sonic and the Secret Rings, and I love that game. So it's made me more optimistic about the future. It's made me feel a little weird about calling that era the Dark Age, frankly, but where I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah. I think for me, these were a lot of these because I've played a decent chunk of the adventure and modern games, but I think out of the classic era, I'd probably only really touched Sonic 1 16-bit. The Christian Whitehead port of Sonic CD for my phone. As I mentioned, Sonic 2 8-bit being my first Sonic game.
Yes.
So, playing the rest of the classic era definitely gave me an appreciation for the classic era, but also appreciate that Sonic has evolved enough in the 3D era. Like, so I finished Sonic Frontiers probably about a month or so ago after having it since launch day, and it made me appreciate a lot of the quality of life changes in Frontiers compared to it's weird comparing 3D open world Sonic to 16-bit side-scrolling Sonic, but it made me appreciate a lot of the changes that have gone on over the course of the series.
I think it's a good illustration of how video games in general have changed, because even a Sonic game that I may not consider that great now doesn't have a lot of the things that frustrated me most in this. With the Game Gear games, it's that, not just that it feels jank, but that it feels like you can't even do anything some of the time. You'll die so quickly to Sonic 1-8-bits bosses or 2 as well.
I mean, that's where Hog Tech came from.
Oh yeah, that running joke that we never ran with.
It's hard to run with it, because it was so in the moment and very dedicated to a one moment thing that was happening.
Yeah, I must say, for as much as I am usually a purist when it comes to these games, and I'd rather not use any mods. I will say, even without modifying the game, I very much have to say these games were way better spamming the heck out of save states, because otherwise I wouldn't have gotten past the first zone in some of these.
Sonic Origins Plus just got announced very, very recently.
I saw
and
that.
They showed that, we're adding all the Game Gear games to them. And it honestly broke my heart, because there are so many things that you could do to make those more bearable, and it's very clearly just plain emulation that they show in the trailer.
It would be another thing also if it was like engine recreation even, but it's not even that. It's literally just emulation.
If they at least add maybe save states and rewind, it would
make it more
things
bearable. Yeah, because a lot of the 8-bit games that we played, especially, or the 8-bit platformers, they are a lot more bearable with save states.
Yeah.
There might be some boomer out there that'll call me a pansy for calling like Sonic 1 or 2 8-bit too hard, but I think they are too hard. And that's game design sensibilities changing over almost 30 years.
New games can be hard too, but hard in different ways.
Well, so you compare Sonic 2, you watched me play Sonic 2 8-bit, and you know how frustrated I got with it.
Yeah,
and then compare me playing like Elden Ring the other night, and how much more fun I was having with that, despite it also being a hard game. Or when we've played Dark Souls 3 together. It's a lot more fun because those are well-balanced hard games, whereas Sonic 2 8-bit is, or any of the 8-bit games really, they have the problem of just not being well-balanced.
You just don't have much of choice.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. It's all opinions at the end of the day, obviously.
Sure.
But I feel pretty justified in saying the 8-bit games were too much, because contrast them with their 16-bit counterparts. I mean, I'll admit, when I first played Sonic 1, oof, that's rough. But being the purist that I am, I committed to it, and I was able to get through all of Sonic 1 without states, using finite lives, all that jazz, eventually. But I tried to commit the same thing to Sonic 1 8-bit. I think I got barely past Jungle, and then I was like, this game is too much. It broke me. It's on another level.
Happened to me.
I never got further than Jungle as a kid on like the SADX collection, which is still disappointingly competitive with Origins apparently, but you know. So with all that said, what were our biggest struggles with this era? Was it those 8-bit platformers, or perhaps something else?
I think specifically for me, it was Sonic 2 8-bit.
There's lots of ways to look at that. I mean, I think by and large, the 8-bit games were just the biggest struggle. But, I mean, single game, actually, is just Sonic Spinball, because I'm terrible at pinball, and save states can't save me there.
Yeah, that's fair also.
It's the only game I didn't actually finish.
Yeah, I did finish Spinball. I don't remember if I guess I probably used states for it, but and part of this is that part of the growing thing was that we loosened up. I think we used more save states on hard games the further that we went.
Yeah.
100%.
We got more okay with, what some people might call cheating.
It's weird how different. I would expect at least they could make, like, the feel similar. No. Sonic's movement is lame in the 8-bit games. Like, if you ruin that, I feel like you're on a really bad start.
Right.
The thing with the 8-bit games, I knew that I was going to have problems with them basically from the start, but what I want to know now is there anything like that, for better or worse, that surprised you? Because there were things that I didn't expect to like as much as I did, and things that I didn't expect to disappoint me the way that they did.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You're not specifically asking among the 8-bit games, are you?
No, I'm asking among the whole era.
Yeah, well, so probably the biggest thing for me was just how thoroughly I adore Sonic R. Amazing game.
Yeah, I might have to agree with that.
It was the early 3D games for me, too. Sonic R and Sonic the Fighters. I had no idea that Sonic the Fighters I was going to like as much as I did. To the point that when Sonic Origins Plus was announced, I got kind of angry that they didn't bring back anything other than the 8-bit games.
Yeah,
because I'd put up with Mean Bean Machine and with Sonic 3D Blast if they put fucking R and Fighters in there, but those are hard to report, I guess.
Well, I disagree that R is because it already has a PC port.
Not a stable
So
one, in fairness, but
okay, fair enough. We used a lot of mods to get when we played to work. But I think I have to agree with both of those. That how much I ended up because I'd always heard that R was bad,
Right?
yeah.
and then I played it. And I'm like, this game's great. It's super fun.
Yeah, I heard for years people would list R as like one of the worst Sonic games up there with Labyrinth, but you know, it's
Yeah.
maybe a bit light on content, but it's fun.
Sure, but it's an early 3D racing game. I kind of expect that.
Yeah, it's perfectly serviceable little thing.
Yeah,
Now,
for
in
what
fairness-
it is,
in
it's
fairness,
fun.
in fairness, the PC mods do make the steering a little bit better, but I don't think it was
Fair
like
enough.
it was not like terrifying.
But no, that one was great, and Sonic the Fighters was just one of those games I'd never heard a whole lot about, other than it being a Sonic fighting game, and I think it got a canceled Saturn port, or was going to have a canceled Saturn port. And since then it's been really hard to play, other than like the XBLA and PSN ports.
Well, now
Which
it's
granted,
included as a random arcade game you can find in Lost Judgment, which means it
Right.
technically has a PC port. If you can put Lost Judgment on PC, just put that version in. In any case, yeah, Fighters and R were
Yeah.
really surprisingly good.
Yeah,
Yes.
no.
I do have an honorable mention though for this category, which is I was surprised by Tails Adventure also.
Ooh, that's another good
Yeah.
one.
It's definitely not I don't love it as thoroughly as Sonic R,
Right.
but I was impressed by it on many counts. A Sonic themed Metroidvania is great.
Yeah, it's a solid idea.
And it's cool to have Tails with all his inventions too. A Tails focused game is great. And yeah, so it's just an open-ended, albeit, yeah, somewhat punishingly difficult. Although at least the game gets a lot better as you collect like the Chaos Emeralds.
Sure.
It actually kind of gets easier if more complicated. But more complicated because of how it branches out and not because it's stupid unfair, I think.
And more complicated also isn't inherently bad.
Yeah, I will say it's very much held back by the fact you can only hold a small amount of items. I
Sure.
want someone to mod where you just have every item at all times. That would be great.
Hey
But-
Sega, guess what you're putting in Sonic Origins? You can do this.
Yeah, that would be
Or-
really nice.
Or maybe like a reimagined version, like not port, but like a remake.
Well, this
That-
this segues perfectly into the next thing I want to talk about, which is, for better or worse, things that you found interesting in these games that you want to see tried again. And definitely Tails Adventure is up there with things they should try again.
Yes, that would be great. So, the thing I think of is Sonic CD and its time travel. Not necessarily in the form of time travel, but I dig it because it's the dark world, light world concept, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
Different versions of the same area you can travel between that are tweaked in ways that give them different feels. I just love that recurring thing in video games.
Yeah, like Link to the Past.
Exactly.
Yeah. That would be pretty cool. I could see that being done in like a modern Sonic RPG.
Well, I'm thinking about how, like, Frontiers, that game is pretty good, but it had to make the absolute most it could with the content that it has. There is a lot of signs that they were stretching toward the end of that game. And, you know, if they
yeah.
need to repeat geometry in one way or another, radically altering its appearance to give it a positive or negative vibe, if you have to go through it again, would be a great way of doing that.
Sure.
You know, there's a little island in Oranos, just a little plateau off the edge of it, that is, for some reason in that game, there's just a little tiny island where everything is fall. It's just autumn. The grass is brown, the trees are orange, and it's like, huh, this is kind of nice. And one of my favorite mods, one of the mods that I will never turn off for Sonic Frontiers, takes it so that all of Oranos is fall-themed, so that it doesn't just look like Kronos again.
Nice.
I like that. That's a
So
cool
that's
mod.
almost like a bad future version of that little thing, and I would love to see them try that again.
Yeah, even like you point out, on like maybe a bit of a small scale, but no, that would be cool. I think there's a few more general game genres I'd like to see Sega take a crack at again. Main ones being like I want to see something like Sonic R again. I think on-foot racing makes a lot more sense for Sonic characters, or
Yeah.
at least. I want to see another Sonic fighting game. like actual one-on-one, not like Smash Brothers, like because Sonic is in Smash. I don't want to see like a Smash Brothers Sonic game. I want to see like a semi-competitive one-on-one fighter. Nothing like too intense because I'm also really bad at one-on-one fighters.
There's a fan game called Sonic Smackdown that we should probably talk about at some point.
I think I've heard of that.
It looks really nice.
There's also Sonic Metroidvania idea. I think either just like a remake of Tails Adventure with some of the quality of life improvements we've mentioned, or go like the full route and do like a character swapping of Metroidvania where you can jump between like Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy for traversal.
So maybe the Sonic and Knuckles pickups actually let you become Sonic and Knuckles.
Yeah, exactly.
And those are your movement upgrades, like, you know, your Shine Spark or whatever. And what's interesting is that all of these games have something kind of like that in a modern idiom. Because there is another Sonic fighting game. It is an arena fighter, so it's not quite the same.
Oh, yeah.
And there is another Sonic on-foot racing game, but it's in 2D. And there is another Sonic-style Metroid-ish game where you swap between characters to access different areas. Two of them, in fact.
Wait, what games are those?
They are, of course, the two 3DS games of the Sonic Boom brand.
Oh, okay, yeah, that is kind of fair.
One of which is actually good, though, so it's alright.
That's true. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, I'm thinking more like the classic Sonic, or actual like regular Sonic style. Like,
yeah, no, I know,
and limbs and all.
All of these are Twisted Monkey's Paw equivalents to these things. They're not quite the same.
Right. No, like in a perfect world, it would be like, you know, you get like a weird melding of like a Sonic Advance and the GBA Castlevania games.
Yeah.
And also, I want to see another crack taken at Knuckles Chaotix.
So, yes.
I think the ring mechanic could be made better, or just get rid of it.
I had Chaotix actually listed as my surprising disappointment because a lot of these games that have gotten a bad rap, I played them and were like, oh, you know, it actually was not too bad. But honest, I was very disappointed by Chaotix. I do recognize there's good stuff in there.
Sure.
And so, yes, I think it definitely deserves another chance. But as it is, it's just not great.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Are there any ROM hacks for Chaotix that try to fix it?
I don't think so. I'll look again, but I did look before and I couldn't find anything.
That's true. I thought I remembered you mentioning that. So...
Chaotix is up there with 3D Blast in that I want a game that takes all of the work put into the sights and sounds of these, but just gives it good level design instead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess... So I did state that 3D Blast was my least favorite game that we covered for the Classic Era.
It's fair.
But I hope I made it clear in the 3D Blast episode. I'm not sure if I did or I was just too overtly negative. I did think there were good aspects, and I think those good aspects should be expanded upon.
Did they make it shine out over Sonic 2 8-bit?
Oh, shit. Well, Sonic 2 8-bit was another level of bad that I don't think can be topped by any other game at the moment. But my normal least favorite game we covered was 3D Blast. Sonic 2 8-bit is like the primordial ooze of bad. It
ascends or descends below.
Yes, it descends below 3D Blast. If we're talking just normal least favorite, it's 2 8-bit. Which I don't think has anything redeemable about it. That game, every copy of that game needs to be buried in the Nevada desert right now.
Agreed.
But 3D Blast, yeah, I think there are enough good aspects of it that could be made into a good game.
I'm perhaps being a little overly nice to it. Mostly it's just that I fucking love the music to it so much. Both versions, but the Saturn OST for 3D Blast is up there with like the Japanese CD OST as my favorites.
You know what? I listened to the Saturn soundtrack. I wasn't particularly fond of it.
Damn, I guess I'm gonna have to kill you.
Well, I'm gonna join you in on this murder because I agree wholeheartedly. 3D Blast's soundtrack is on point, and
I enjoyed the Genesis soundtrack though. I've listened to both bits and pieces of the Saturn soundtrack.
Both are fabulous,
kind of,
just like Sonic CD. All the best soundtracks have two soundtracks, and are both fabulous.
I mean, the best 3D Blast experience is listening to would be listening to both soundtracks and never touching the game.
Yeah, you're not missing a whole lot.
I hate to I think it was Tech Hut who made the no, not Tech Hut.
Game Hut.
God, Game Hut. Thank you, Game Hut. I hate to shit on the director's cut version because I thought it was going to fix the problems I'd heard about the game. It doesn't. It's still a mess.
Yeah, I find it hilarious. When I was complaining, Devin was like, "You have it so good. You have no idea." And I'm like, "You mean it gets worse than this?"
Yeah, I can't imagine going and then playing the fucking regular Genesis version or the Saturn or PC version. I can't imagine it. With how much I struggled with the director's cut version.
I mean, I guess it is commendable if it gets worse, but it just goes to show. I think the game needs a whole rehaul. Unfortunately,
Yeah, there's only so much you can do to polish a turd.
Well, in any case, that's all in the past. So far, that literally every game that we've talked about up to this point is older than we are.
That is true.
But games were not the only thing we talked about, because we also talked about cartoons. And it's like, oh, I have my list of discussion prompts on here, and I see, oh, what are the best and worst shows? And it's like, well, we already know that.
it's pretty obvious. Yeah.
Yeah.
We all have the same answer.
Sadaim is the best, Underground is the worst.
Yep.
Unless we're talking like I guess the OVA has the better aesthetic.
Well, it's not a show though. So
it was gonna be.
If we're going if we're gonna count pilots, then I'd say OVA is the best.
Well, then there is some contention because I disagree.
I mean that's fair enough.
we talked about how if this had become a full series, it would have to have a lot of tinkering done to make it work.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, in that case, also, what about the short from Sonic?
I don't know if that was a pilot for. I don't know what that was, honestly.
I mean, it didn't need to exist. That's what it was.
It was Eggman in a Sonic suit. It was funny.
But
it was funny.
Man, jumping around, it's the best.
It was funny, but it was very much. It was like 7 minutes of me wondering why am I watching this.
I mean, it is very random.
Remember, that's the prequel to Sonic Adventures. Sonic gets #canceled, and he only comes back years later in an adventure.
That's right. It's a good thing we're bringing it up again.
That's right.
Remember that context.
We did mention that when we were talking about it, I believe.
That's right. Okay, so
if it's just the 3 cartoons, then yeah, Satam's the best. Underground is the unfortunate worst because it could have been decent, and Adventures is in the fucking middle.
Adventures has a very low potential ceiling, but it would be a lot more bearable if it didn't have to be 66 episodes long.
Yeah, if it was only 20 episodes, I would have watched all of it.
Here's the thing. First of all, you are weak. You should have watched all of it anyway.
I'm weak, you're right.
Second of all, I have respect for Adventures because it set out to do what exactly is what it did. It didn't come out right. I have respect for Adventures because it did exactly what it set out to do.
Right.
And nothing more, but nothing less, really, either.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
It's not like it misleads you about its intentions, certainly.
That is to say, it doesn't stoop as low as Underground, for instance. That see, I
was also too weak to watch all of Underground, to be fair.
I don't blame you for that. So with Underground, I do have some sadness, but it doesn't extend that far because I feel like Underground had a chance and it blew it, man.
Yes, it did. It very much. That was another show that. I mean, let's be honest here. All of them should have really just been the length of SatAM.
Most likely, although I actually probably wouldn't have minded if SatAM had gone on, ironically.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if it had gone its 3rd season, I think it would have done nothing but... Because I'll admit, I think I mentioned in our last episode of SatAM, at the end of the day, I was a little disappointed by it.
Yeah, you did say that. It made me feel a little sad inside. I do kind of understand where you're coming from, though.
I did enjoy it. I want to make it clear. I enjoyed SatAM. But my problem with it comes from it still felt like it had too much of the fucking around. I wanted more of the heavy plot.
That's the thing, is that SatAM has high potential ceiling, but it's a rather high potential floor, I guess, as well, where it had a lot that it could have done, but its ability to do it was severely limited.
Right. If it had gone in the 3rd season, it really deserved. I would have an even higher opinion of it. I already have a relatively high opinion of it. I enjoyed it. I think it was solid. It just there was enough of the same thing I've complained about about the first half of the comics, where so much of them are just the freedom fighters dicking around.
Yeah, and that's
Right.
the thing is that, one of the things that I put on here is, what would we most want to see continued or rebooted or reimagined? And it's interesting. SatAM is an interesting case study on that because in a way it kind of was. A ton of its plot elements were obviously used for the comics and reincorporated
Right.
into the comics, but they've also taken their own weird direction at this point. So it's like, do we
Right.
even call that a continuation?
I think it's safe. It's safe to call it a somewhat of a continuation because, in my mind, in my mind at least, anything that isn't any episode of SatAM that is not directly adapted, which granted, as far as I know, is only like 2 of them. I still assume that they probably happened.
I mean, the Doomsday Project, no, obviously, but
Well,
like
the
most of
Doomsday
the stuff
Project was
with Dulcie,
deleted,
that's
was-
like
Yeah,
most
well,
of
yeah.
the stuff
so-
with Dulcie, that's her entire character. They don't even reference it in the comics, or they do
Right.
reference it, and it doesn't make sense because you haven't watched the show.
Right. So I think I still come off as, other than the Doomsday Project, which is clearly replaced by Endgame, and I think Endgame is better.
Well,
Um,
I actually agree with you, but I also like the Doomsday Project.
I like the Doomsday Project as well. It's good. I liked Endgame more because it felt like it had it had even more build up, because the Doomsday Project still had like I think 2 episodes of build up.
It was mentioned a number of times, but yeah, like 2 direct episodes.
Right, it had like 2 direct episodes. Other than that, it was just mentioned throughout the second season, or not throughout it, but like through the second half of the second season. Whereas Endgame had like what 5 issues of build up.
Kind of, yeah.
It's about, and that's like 100-ish pages.
Yeah.
I actually I wanted to see what the show I'd want to see rebooted or reimagined would be Sonic Underground.
Oh
'Cause
boy.
I feel like there was potential there if you do like a shorter series and actually resolve the fucking plot.
Well,
So,
this is my bad for being vague with my question because we wish that we could have had season 3 of SatAM, and
Sure.
the comics existing does not necessarily fulfill that. Maybe that season 3 SatAM fan project will. I don't know, but
Yeah, if that never ends up going anywhere,
it seems a little overambitious to be honest.
I'm
but
sure it definitely
there's a
is.
comic continuation that's decently done through.
oh yeah, but it's my fault for being vague because the comic existing does not overwrite that, and I certainly think
No, it
that
doesn't.
if we had like if we had a choice between the secret lost ending of Sonic Underground or the secret lost seasons of SatAM, we'd all choose SatAM.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
But,
for me,
Underground
yeah.
is like you could very easily cash a lot of the checks that it wrote in just a
Yes.
couple episodes.
Well, so I think it has the same problem. It has a problem of just being too long and not resolving its plot to me.
You
If
should
you
have just
cut it
used
down.
the episodes that they filled with garbage to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If you either use your filler episodes, which is like 95% of the series, or you just cut it down and make it short and concise, like 15, 20 episodes. I think Underground could be a good series, and get rid of the singing. Fuck that.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's SatAM is not perfect, definitely not.
Right.
But it did more with a third of the episodes
Yes, it did.
relative to Underground. Underground could have concluded itself in the time it had.
Yeah, and I think I
Um,
think that's why I'd want to see a reimagining of Underground over SatAM, over a continuation of SatAM, because I get enough of the continuation of SatAM with the Archie comics.
I don't see the comics as a continuation of SatAM, but a reimagining of
I mean,
SatAM.
that's realistically what they actually are.
The one time they referenced an episode of SatAM very much confused me, and it didn't make sense, which kind of demonstrates, I think, that it's not a continuation. But
And that's fair enough, yeah.
but at the same time, it might help my heart a little bit if I felt like that. And like Devin said, it's also mixed in with a whole bunch of weirdness. So is it even really a reimagining? Maybe more. It just has SatAM elements.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that it is, though, because I don't think it ever forgets its SatAM roots. Like, I think most recently, with freaking Nate Morgan. Like, what the heck? That's a deep treasure pulled up that
Yeah, because
I wouldn't
Nate
have
was
ever
supposed
thought
to be
about.
in season 3, right?
Right.
Spins like Wizard Man.
So I the comics will always have my respect, even
Right.
if it's also full of tons of weird nonsense.
Yeah, and that's the same thing. I think that's what pushes Underground so far down. Is that Sad AM is full of problems, but it's
Right.
respectable because you can tell how hard they're trying.
Right, they're
and,
trying to make something really good.
and they hit gold a lot of the time. Underground just feels like they weren't trying that hard a lot of the time, and that's what makes
Right.
people hate it because
And
they had room to try.
Yeah. Right. And I think it's the fact that they had the room and they
So-
squandered it. But I think that universe has potential.
Yeah, so I think what we're feeling is the gap because we feel that Sad AM they tried and more people have tried and we feel fulfilled in some way with that. With Underground, it's much easier to imagine how cool it could be if somebody were to start trying.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Underground really is just frustrating. I agree that it has potential, but yeah, I wouldn't want a continuation. I'd want a redo.
Right, yeah.
Because I wouldn't want to have to
reboot or
rewatch
reimagine.
any of those episodes.
Oh, no, I don't want a continuation at all. I want a reboot or reimagining.
I
of
think
Underground.
maybe there are like, I'm trying to remember. I think the Knuckles arc was actually pretty solid. That was
Yeah.
maybe the only part of Underground that I liked.
And to be honest, other than the 3 episodes that set up the main plot, because stupidly the show's aired out of order.
Yeah, for some reason.
Other than like I think it's 3 episodes that set up the main plot, like everything else is complete filler. And at the end of the day, the Knuckles episodes, the 3 basically prequel episodes, and I think that's it, are the most plot important episodes.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. The weird thing about Underground is it has not interesting episodes now and then, but like interesting scenes now and then. Like that's
Right.
how diluted it is. As I watched the show, I would intensely take notes every time there was any glimmer of intrigue, and then it would not come up again, maybe ever, or maybe 10 episodes later. They had like extremely light bits of intrigue. Just I felt like I was being teased with a carrot on a stick. That's what the show felt like.
Yeah, that's fair. I know I'm the odd one out here for wanting a reboot of Underground over an official continuation of Sad AM.
I think it makes sense, and frankly, part of my thing is that like when I think about continuations and reboots, I think of them in terms of I would want to see this introduced to like the existing Sonic canon somehow, which is not plausible most of the time because like
Realistically, I think the only show that could do that would be Adventures.
yeah, because you could just add Scratch and Grounder. That's all you need. But
Oh God, please no.
no, I'm joking. Part of this is that I'm the guy who loves the Archie reboot continuity that kind of does that. It doesn't have anything from Underground, but it does have stuff from the games and Sad AM and
Right.
Adventures all mashed together in a really interesting way. But
Right.
so I'm on both of your sides kind of. I would like for these things to be concluded more than I would a new ongoing or anything.
Yeah, exactly. I think I just want to see Underground redone and concluded well.
Yeah, and there's a good I don't know if we're ever going to talk about Archie Sonic Online, but that's a fan comic that remakes the lost version of Sonic Universe number 50, which was going to be a conclusion to Sonic Underground, and it's good.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that probably will give me the conclusion that I strangely want for Underground.
So yeah, cartoons.
Yeah, we got a strange amount of of talking just about how much Sonic Underground squanders its potential.
Yeah.
Well, it's just endlessly frustrating
Yeah.
or potentially interesting. Well, I feel like Adventures was robbed a little bit because there are 3 shows. We talked about the best and the worst, and then Adventures is just lost. Although, to be fair, there isn't a whole lot of substance.
No, there's not enough there to really be
Adventures
relevant to
is
talk about to
slapstick
me.
comedy. It's simple, and I
Yeah.
think that a simple summary of how we felt about it is enough. I think the
Yeah.
Chaos Emeralds are fun. The Chaos Emerald episodes.
Yeah, those are probably, to me at least, the best episodes because they have an overarching plot.
And of course, Long John Baldry as Robotnik is God's gift to memes. So.
Oh
Thank
God,
you.
yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention how wonderful he is in the show because he's the star of the show. When you mentioned
the best part.
When you mentioned, oh, you could probably do an adventures thing, you just bring in Scratch and Grounder, I'm like, I'm so sorry, Devin. It's impossible. It's actually the one that you could do the least because you would not have Robotnik.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the same with Eggman. I'm sorry.
It would not be the same with Mike Pollock Eggman. As much as I love, at least if you did it right now.
He's done the snooping as usual line even in Sonic Boom, but yeah, Sonic Boom in a lot of ways is kind of an Adventures of Sonic done right, but with not as good baldriness. Baldriness?
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. I was just listening to some I Teach Vader's YouTube poop movie music videos, and yesterday, and they're still great.
Oh yes, highly recommend I Teach Vader. He's great. He also got surprisingly good like original music too, which is maybe what you were saying, but not even related to the memes. He does also have meme music, which is great as well, as we mentioned.
Find a way to win the race.
Yeah.
God, I haven't watched a YouTube poop in years.
But this is what I like about Adventures. It's substanceless, and that's why it's amazing.
It's an easy watch, if nothing else. Yeah.
It's almost a show that you could like throw on while playing like Euro Truck Simulator.
Possibly. I've never
or
played
trying
Euro
to
Truck
sleep.
Simulator, but
No. If I listened to that while falling asleep, I'd have some weird ass fever dreams.
Okay, fair enough. It's something to maybe you're like recovering from an injury. There you go.
Yeah, you have like nothing to watch. You've already binged Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. What are you gonna watch?
I'd probably rewatch BoJack if I did that, but yeah.
No. What are you gonna watch? You're gonna watch Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog after you've already watched Breaking Bad.
Robotnik Horseman. No, that's not gonna work. Yeah.
I also have to say that I don't think this was intentional, really. I'm reading into it too much, but I had a lot of fun reading into Adventures too much. There are little bits of continuity here and there with certain recurring characters and ideas, which makes it kind of interesting because it's a wacky, crazy world. But if you think of it sort of overly analytically, it's like, wow, so what is this that they've created? Because a few times they actually, try to think about, rather than just, we can do whatever the heck we want. I mean, it's also still that. It's just Looney Tunes. But occasionally you get like, little bits where it's like, okay, now we've got this wacky world. What can we do with it? Sort of a thing. And enough such that I'm waiting eagerly when we get, yes, you mentioned Scratch and Grounder. That's the obvious easy ones. But I'm looking forward to more elements, the deeper ones that people don't remember as much, showing up in the comics. Because there's a little more you could get than just Scratch and Grounder.
I am surprised. I've looked into the later comics a little bit, just not even on purpose. I guess saying I've looked into them is wrong. I've ran across information, and I'm surprised by how much from Adventures ends up in the comics.
Yeah, they do some interesting stuff with it.
No Mama Robotnik, but that's okay. I can't have everything I want.
You'd be surprised. I mean, they don't, but, like, for some one-off jokes, they do.
Okay, well, that's good.
Speaking of which, the comics are an insane nightmare of many different competing ideas across many different mediums and comics. Just the comics as a body. I don't even know if it's right to talk about it, because we did so much Archie that it's like, the mangas are being overshadowed, that French comic is being overshadowed.
I think there's not enough of the manga for us to even.
I hate that the mangas are lost media. It sucks.
Yeah, no, it is disappointing.
It's a shame.
It's a shame because I would have read more because there's just not much substance to them, so you can easily just binge through a bunch of them. And
some of them were drawn pretty nicely. Certainly better than some Archie comics were.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the problem of having like a million different artists.
Right.
But the French comic is actually legitimately interesting.
Man, yes, the French comic was a wonderful appetizer.
Yeah,
for Sonic the comic. Because I know a lot of those elements are going to show up again because they both come from the Sonic Bible.
Right, yeah, I found it very interesting how much came from the Sonic Bible. Being the games never used anything, But no, the French comic was legitimately interesting and kind of a fun little read.
Yeah,
Also,
it had
it's
really
incredibly
expressive
stylish,
and
too.
dynamic art,
Yes.
and it was a fun
Yeah.
little story.
Yeah, no, it's I think it was that comic that made me came to my gave me a small headcanon that Sonic just likes going fast no matter what, even if he's not running.
Yes.
Like if he's going like on a roller coaster, he's gonna be hyped as fuck.
That makes the boost games make a lot of sense.
It really
Right.
does. I don't even know if that's really just a headcanon. I feel like that should just be canon.
Yeah. Also, it had Knuckles but a girl, so, how
Yeah,
can you hate
that
it?
one that was a weird because I was expecting it just to be normal ass Knuckles, and then it's Knuckles with boobs.
The writers of those, I don't think he had The
I
writers of
think she
that
did.
comic should go to war with Penders and say that Julie Sue is a ripoff of
Oh
their
my
character.
god.
I was wrong.
I don't,
You can't do that because then he would somehow say it was the other way around, even though that's impossible.
He does do that with friggin' somebody. I don't know.
no,
Anyway.
that's never gonna happen because I doubt the writers of the French Sonic comic give enough of a shit.
I don't even know if they're still alive. I could find no information on them.
I was wrong.
Fair enough.
I also
Man.
didn't try that hard, but still.
Now we were talking about continuations. I forgot the French comic actually ends on a cliffhanger.
It's true. That deserves
That
at
would have been
least
worthy
another
of a
issue.
continuation.
Like make it a small
not
mini
just one
series.
issue, or yeah, perhaps.
Like start off with a small mini series and see how it does, and then go on from there.
I think that the French comic is insubstantial enough that they probably could have just folded parts of it into the actual Sonic the comic.
Yeah, I mean that's close enough.
I think that would just be a problem of
You lose Gruckles, but that's okay.
Also, that's just probably a problem of rights owners, though.
I don't know what the rights are looking like for that one, because, yeah, with Fleetway, it's like Fleetway owns all of the stuff that was made for it, or rather the writers do.
Right.
So that stuff's never shown up in a Sonic game, but...
Sure. What was the French comic's name? Like In the Claws of Robotnik or something?
Sounds right.
Yeah, it was Sonic Adventures in the... Yeah.
Yeah, so... that's a really cool name. But I would assume all of that is probably owned by whoever published it in French.
Probably. I guess if the British comics can be owned by their creators, the French ones probably
Was
can
that
too.
so? Was what we read a fan translation, or was it actually released in English officially?
It was a fan translation.
Okay, that's what I figured. Then yeah, no, definitely owned by the publishers in France. Also, we're forgetting about the Sonic manga where he curses like a lot.
I just said the manga because they're all kind of folded into one for right now, but yeah, that's
I mean,
a fan translation thing too.
I'm still convinced that was probably machine translated.
Yeah, the manga were weird and interesting. I like the whole Sonic as an alter ego that's maybe passed down the generations.
That was kind of cool.
And his personality is so different too. He's just a maniac. Anton was like a horrible person, but also Sonic was over the top.
Sonic was also kind of a horrible person.
That's what
You
I'm
baked him into a pizza.
Yeah, no,
Yikes.
I mean, but it made it fun though because Nikki was so meek.
Nikki
right. Yeah,
is
it's
the cuck
a
boy
great
supreme.
contrast. And then it's funny because Eggman is actually just like having a laugh, being ridiculous, making big old egg machines, and he's just like, hey, Sonic, you will be my underling. Like that's his plan.
Devin mentioning that Nikki, I think he said he was cuck supreme.
I called him cuck boy supreme.
Yeah, that just reminded me of the best moment when Amy, for some reason, agrees to a competition for who's going to date her, even though she's already dating Nikki.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I remember that.
I don't know why that's my favorite moment, but it's so silly.
A lot of good stuff in the manga.
It's surprisingly good stuff, even if the manga itself is
there's not.
unfinished.
It's the same deal as a lot of the Underground and AOSTH stuff, where it has a lot of potential that doesn't really get realized, and I assume it probably doesn't even if we had all the chapters. But the difference is, this one is less frustrating because you control the pace at which you read a comic book, which does a lot for just general breeziness and feeling okay with how much we cover each week.
Yeah, which I think that can lead us into Archie, because I think that's very much helped with our enjoyment of Archie.
Archie Sonic, the Sonic comic to end all Sonic comics. It is a fucking trip.
Yeah, it
There
is a
is.
fucking trip.
It's hard to even talk about it as one thing because it is so much.
Well, I think it's also hard because we've only covered one chunk of it.
Yeah, barely
Yeah.
scratched the surface.
Yeah, we're so by the end of what we've currently read, I think we've only read like
At the point that this is uploaded, we have done 147 issues.
right.
So Archie Sonic ended at Sonic number 293, I want to say.
Good
Maybe
God.
it's 297. And there's
Something like that.
also, I believe it's 297 Sonic ended, and then 93 is when Sonic Universe ended. So that is about 400 issues, some odd left.
Over
Around a quarter
400.
of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's fair. Yeah, we've done a quarter of it. That is kind of impressive.
Which makes sense, because we've split our show into 4 eras. So.
Right.
I don't know what we're going to do as, like, the current era we're in continues, because it's not really the same as it was in the 2010s with Frontiers and all that, but that's a problem. That's a bridge we'll cross when we come to it. But yes, Archie Sonic. So,
Yeah.
the early comics were definitely the hardest part of it, because,
They were.
not to give Penders too much of the benefit of the doubt, but he does at least write stories. And my
Yes.
problem with Gallagher and Monarch is that very often what they were writing and illustrating felt like a loosely connected series of gags more than it did any kind of story with consequences.
Yeah, so I think we talked about it, that the very early comics, like the miniseries and up until around when Penders joins, it feels a lot more like Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, or like
Yeah.
a Sunday morning comic strip, which ironically there is also a Sonic comic strip that we're probably not going to cover. But once Penders comes in, as much as we shit on him, yeah, he brings structure to the comics. The comics start going from little one-off things with some vague continuity to let's try and build something more out of this. Granted, what that turns into is a kind of heaping flaming pile, but it's still better than,
Nothing.
barely connected.
Yeah.
The way I see Archie Sonic is it's just everything. It's the good, the bad, the weird, and so it doesn't all have to be great. It doesn't all have to appeal to the same kind of people.
Oh, yeah.
So, see, it's weird. I mean, I agree with what you all are saying, but I feel very much like, no, the comics are what they are. My reactions don't get as strongly negative because I feel like it's a 400 issue thing, as we were covering. It's not going to be consistent. And so I just don't have my standards super high. And so, like, yeah, the beginning, it was rough to talk about, I suppose. That wasn't fun. But, like, I think it is what it is, and that's fine. I mean, also it's helped by the fact that I'm kind of nostalgic for the early comics, as I am for Adventures, actually. And, so the silly, substance-less era of the comics doesn't bother me so much. And the other thing that I like about the comics is no matter how stupid or amazing or whatever a comic is, you should read it because it will probably come up again. So I was still taking notes even in the early year because I know things will come back.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I've taken notes throughout all of them.
See, here's my thing. Is that I understand both you guys' perspectives, and I obviously enforced a bunch of Bruce's, but what I do want to say is that I don't have a problem with something being episodic comedy in action, and I don't have a problem with it being that, even if it's going to transition into developing more of a story, but I do need more substance than I think what Archie Sonic brought, because, like, one of my favorite television series of all time is Adventure Time. And Adventure Time doesn't have a fucking shit for a plot for, like, most of the first 3 seasons, but what it does do is that it does the same thing where every episode technically matters to some degree, or will have some kind of long-term being brought up again, and it builds a universe holistically. And my problem with Archie Sonic is that while you can say that most things do indeed come up again later, I would say that if something comes up again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's being fulfilling or important. And I would like much more for something to be, to have an effect, or at least a meaning. Because if that Universe Salamander story did get published, I wouldn't care.
I mean, yeah.
Well, I mean, is Adventure Time 400 episodes long?
It's 10 seasons, so it's quite a few. I'll see how exactly that is.
That's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's not 400 episodes. It's pretty good, though.
No, but it is 283.
That's, okay, 283. Yeah, okay, that's pretty good, actually.
And I'm also dunking on myself here, because I do sometimes leave certain episodes out of Adventure Time if I rewatch it, so I guess I'm a hypocrite.
Well, second thing, though, did Adventure Time have a lot of different writers?
It went through a few different teams, but it's definitely more consistent overall, I admit. And that is the thing, is that Archie Sonic is much more a projection of a whole bunch of different people leaving their little touches on it, and the way that gets built up. And I do like that aspect of it.
That's definitely true.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I'm just like, you can't expect perfection. Honestly, I am very fine with the comics going in and out of being good and bad and weird, because I know that it will always come back to being good. Like, I never lose hope. It's like there are other, shows or game series or whatever, pieces of media, that's it, that I feel are much more prone to having prolonged eras of just gross, bad. The comics do not last that long, even when they get bad.
I'd say that the comics are kind of a modicum of Sonic as a franchise, where even if it's inconsistent, it's at least consistently inconsistent.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Because I would rather have something that's inconsistently good than something that's consistently bad.
Yeah. No, yeah, I can agree with that.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's pretty obvious. If we want to dig in a little more, we could talk about... Well, we talked about the beginning, so I guess we...
Yeah, there's sort of that era where they're building up pieces, where it really does become more of a, not necessarily ongoing, but at least consistent fight between the Freedom Fighters and Robotnik, and there was a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, that is a pretty sweet spot, because, I mean, we're talking about Saturday AM continuations. That's definitely the part that feels the most like it.
Yeah, and it's like not every piece of it needs to be individually good. Like we didn't especially like the Sally miniseries, but the fact that it existed, it did lend a certain, not prestige, but at least a feel that she was one piece in a big moving world, because stuff happened when she was there and when she was gone and stuff. I don't know.
No, sure. We had the Sally and
Tails and Knuckles.
Yeah, that's right. Knuckles had miniseries before he was an actual series. Well, that's my favorite part of Archie Sonic, is the whole world that maybe isn't done perfectly. No, of course it's not done perfectly, but it still comes together, and when it comes together, it's great. Yeah, there's lots of moving parts that come in and out, and I'm just a sucker for how things come and go, and it feels more like a full journey in that sense, I suppose.
Yeah. And there's just, a lot of good moments. It is those critical points where the different ideas laid out by writers and games and TV shows that are all being condensed into this comic crash into each other. They produce really interesting results. Mecha Madness is probably the highlight of that era of the comic.
Yeah.
Where you have roboticization, you have the Sonic versus Knuckles, and you have the artist who most cares about making things look like SEGA could have put their name on them. And even let Bunny fight.
Yeah, no, Bunny was good.
Yeah.
Is Bunny best girl? I think she might be.
When the other competition is Sally, who is unfortunately very bitchy, and Amy, who's 10. I think Bunny is best girl.
Okay, cool.
You're probably right. I'd have, if in order to answer this decisively, I would have to take them all and then rank the stories and stuff. But my instinct says yes, probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, why do anime fans struggle with this? That was easy.
maybe it's because this isn't an anime. Although it sometimes tries to be.
No, excuse me. It's not an anime. It's a soap opera.
Oh yeah, I guess kind of. That's
Well, just
true.
because something is a bad anime doesn't mean it... No, I'm just kidding.
One thing I think I can say I never really like in these comics, though, is when they have the weird crossovers. I mean, they're entertaining, I suppose, but I feel like you wouldn't lose anything by not doing them.
Mm.
Right? It's just weird, these comics' obsession with referencing other media. Obviously, that's that's the heaviest, but...
Oh, so when you say crossover, do you mean the actual comic crossovers, or do you just mean the references and parodies, or both, I suppose?
I'm talking about all of it. I probably shouldn't have called it crossovers, especially since those become heavier later. Yeah, I just mean, yeah.
Just
It's
the
not a
abundance of
crossover,
other
but
media in it.
yes, it's just weird that that's so much a part of its identity, at least for now.
It's especially a thing because that breaks a lot of the world. Because when you can have characters just talk about, like, oh, is this Jurassic Park for Sega Genesis? It's like, shut up! Your world is post-apocalyptic, you shouldn't know that. And it's like, yes, obviously that wasn't decided at the time, but
Right.
it does get to you, because it's like a gnat buzzing around near your ear. It feels off. I hope as spring and summer get closer, I don't get mosquitoes in my room. That would really suck.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, I definitely understand your frustration with that. And then the actual crossovers are completely inconsequential and also some of the weirdest shit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can't be too hard on them because even in the crossovers, the comics continue to be the comics. I love when I have to reference back to the crossovers because something that happened and it was important. That's the best. Never change. It's consistent. It's a consistency, like you said. I like that. It's very good.
Yeah, and I think things have taken an upward turn. I think for a while there, between the Sonic comics experimenting and flailing around wildly while Robotnik was dead, and the Knuckles comics being the Knuckles comics, and, for a lot of that, they didn't have the best artists. It's like Steven Butler was pretty much all you were going to get for decent artists. But, now we've got James Fry, and I love his work, and, well, actually, we're going to get Ron Lim once we get to the Adventure comics, and that's not going to be great. But he starts out okay. It's I think we're in a better place ever since Robotnik came back.
Oh, certainly. Something I was going to mention and didn't back when Bruce compared Endgame to the Doomsday Project. The difference between those two things: the Doomsday Project was never. I mean, I think they were aware it could have been the last season. They definitely left a lot of things open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Endgame, they thought it could be the last issue, but they actually treated it as such as well. They closed everything up. It was neat. It was tidy. It was awesome.
Mm.
And so, coming off the heels of that, yeah, it's not going to be great. I mean, it could have been great, but I understand why it wasn't. So, certainly, I feel like that was almost inevitable.
Yeah, and I mean, it's part of that it's like it made such a bad first impression for Ballers, specifically, just because he was stuck writing issues that it seemed like he wasn't totally comfortable with the material some of the time, but he's been on point in these last couple episodes.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciated him before as well. We talked about it before, but one of the fascinating emerging qualities of these comics, it was always interesting to see different writers have their own takes on things. But this isn't so much their own take as no, I'm right. No, I'm right. And we saw that beforehand. I appreciated when Ballers came in to fix up some of the stupid stuff that Penders would do. But yeah, certainly now he's not just on cleaning duty. He's rolling.
Right.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say, because I'm thinking about how, like, Ballers sticks around for quite a while, and then he leaves about a year before Penders does, and Penders takes his last year to fuck things up beyond a lot of repair. And so the first year of Ian Flynn's run is also him doing cleanup for Penders.
Oh my god, that is tragic, man. I can't believe that Penders outlasted Baller's. He was the hero that I wanted.
Hey, you'll be
Uh,
surprised who manages to outlast Penders.
yeah, I mean, some heroes die. It's a shame, but they'll still be remembered.
In any case, yeah, and Penders is just, it's like I don't know if we need to spend a whole thing on Penders, but it's hard not to because he was so influential and is so just terminally mean to people all the time over a licensed comic book from 30 years ago, and it's just he was so. I'm trying to figure out the right way to describe it. He desperately wants to be loved for creating these things, and I think that I don't know if he'd ever get the universal acclaim that he wants. But it's like a lot of these stories have things to really like about them, and I feel like sometimes it may seem like I'm taking the piss out of Penders because I just really like being rude about him. And while that is true to some extent, I feel like if he hadn't been just a jerk to people, I would be so much nicer to him. Lawsuits included. And I do wish that things had turned out better for basically everyone, because it's like I have learned to appreciate some of his work in a way that I didn't before. A lot of it is still really bad, and it's like if you could just say that would mean so much. I don't know if I'm getting over emotional here. I'm sorry. I don't need you guys
No.
to do. I don't need you guys to do the labor of diagnosing my mental problems. But
Jesus
No,
Christ.
I won't do that, but I will respond in some manner. Your whole take on that man has always colored my Sonic Archie comics experience. I feel like some of it is warranted. I feel like it's not all. I don't know. It's always a weird thing where it's like, do you separate the artist from the art or not? I mostly am the boat of nah. Let's look at the art, unless it's somehow relevant to the art, because sometimes it is. You do need context.
Yeah.
Certainly, a lot of the context you've brought is fascinating, but the lawsuit stuff will become relevant later because it killed the original continuity. But none of that stuff has any bearing on what we covered so far. That's just the way I see it.
Yeah, I it's like you and I are both biased due to nostalgia, but I've got the additional bias of I keep reading Penders' awful tweets and it makes me a worse person. I think that Bruce probably has the least biased perspective out of all of us because he's got the least to lose.
I'll be transparent. We're technically recording this before we've recorded the last Archie Sonic episode. So I already don't feel right giving a conclusive opinion on the current batch of comics.
Well, I don't have the context of we're gonna have already covered the fabulous conclusion of Knuckles comics, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like that. I definitely want to see how that pans out because that's the one thing he doesn't praise.
Indeed. Yeah.
So I think if I'm going to give an opinion, it's that there's been a lot of highs and a lot of very low lows. I don't know if there's been any high highs. There's definitely been highs. I can't say I'm disappointed that I've started reading these comics though. I think that's solid enough praise.
Yeah, I think that Penders' biggest liability is when he's not made to do stuff interesting. When they give him free reign over a backup story or just anything that's not supposed to be of too much consequence, he has absolutely no idea what to do with it. When he knows what he's doing, he can create something fun, I think. But God, some of those backup stories are so fucking boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are those are definitely the bank stories though, so I'm not surprised that they're boring.
Yeah, the backup stories are probably Penders' consistently weakest works. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to say. It's hard to give an overall conclusion. I think I liked Penders better before he started getting a lot of free reign on stuff, though. I feel like he's better when he's part of the bunch, but when he gets his Knuckles comics, where he can do whatever he wants, that's when he starts to go overboard. He just needs a little guidance, a little restraint.
He needs a good editor, which Justin Guthrie
Yes.
did not provide him with.
Mm.
And what's interesting
Fair
is that
enough.
Mike Pellerito, the second editor, who is the one that would evidently bring Flynn and Yardley and such onto the comic, he enters in, I want to say 2005,
Okay.
and like less than a year after that, Penders leaves, citing people trying to control his work as the reason.
Uh-huh. So he leaves because he got an editor who can make his stuff more comprehensible.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So, I guess you just can't win in some cases.
Damn, alright, well.
It's okay, there's plenty of weird left in the tank, I promise.
Right. I'm sure that I mean, again, I've looked forward, or I've had stuff semi-spoiled for me because Archie Sonic was trending for me on Twitter the other day, and I looked at some of the stuff people were talking about. And even if I do remember, I don't really care that much because my theory with spoilers is you spoil what happens. I'm more curious about how it happens.
Exactly. Devin has spoiled a lot of details
Yeah.
for me over the years, and I don't mind at all. If anything, it enhances the experience to a degree, because then when I see little hints, I'm like, oh, is this what they're leading up to? Is it time for this?
Yes,
and then I start theorizing in different directions I wouldn't
That's
have
happened
before.
to me multiple times because, again, Devin has spent like the last decade spoiling the comic for me.
Okay, I want to ask, do either of you know anything about an echidna scientist called Kobar?
That name does not sound familiar at all.
Okay, then that's one spoiler and one hilarious tangent that I will keep with me until we get there.
That's
Okay.
fine. That's fine, of course.
I mean, and as I said, I don't mind the spoilers all that much.
No, because this one is going to launch into an incredibly interesting discussion topic.
Oh, okay. Well, that better not disappoint. How far into the future is that?
Issue 140 something.
Okay, that's like well into what, the Dark Era?
That's the adventure era. We cut it off at 160 when Flynn and Yardley showed up.
Oh, okay. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Anyway. So the Archie comics, yeah, they can only be taken holistically because there's so much that goes into them. I found that, you know, when they have a good script mixed with an artist that knows what they're doing, they outshine pretty much every other like Sonic media that we've talked about other than the games for this.
Yeah, they definitely outshine. Even with the bad and weird stuff, I think they outshine the non-game media, at least at the moment.
I think what I'm saying is I think peak Archie is better than like peak Sat AM or etc.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I do have to agree as well, because it's just a mix of everything. So including the best of the best, I think they're just different things. I don't know. Maybe it's not a perfect equivalency. I think it's fair to say with the shows, but the manga,
yeah, it's incomplete, a lot of it, or it's just not substantially comparable. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's fine. The point is, we had a good time.
Yeah,
that is certainly true. The comics are a good time.
So the last question that I want to ask before we're done here tonight is, what are we looking forward to most in the adventure? I probably should have put that on the document where I prompted all these things, but just first things that come to your mind.
I think, of course, the adventure era of the Archie comics, because as you've pointed out, it gets real wild.
Yep.
Of course, actually talking about the adventure games. Also going back and playing the advanced games, because I remember playing, I think it was Advance 2, maybe 1. That was probably like my second Sonic game.
I am very interested in talking about some of the weirder stuff. I am interested to see how my opinion changes about, like, Sonic Battle, because I haven't played that since the first time I played it all the way through. You know, it's going to be fun making fun of Sonic Shuffle, which for those of our viewers, we've already played and recorded Sonic Shuffle. It's bad. But,
It's like if Mario Party didn't have any of the charm of Mario Party.
We gotta save it for the episode. Yes,
I know.
but,
I just the little tease.
yeah. Yeah, the adventure era of the Archie comics has plenty of wild, weird, wonderful, and waffle. I mean, that was awful with a W, but it just sounds like I'm talking about waffles.
Oh, that was supposed to be awful. Oh, okay.
But I'm also intrigued because I have never watched the Japanese version of Sonic X, and I am really excited to see what that brings.
Sonic X is going to be what I was going to say next.
I haven't even watched the English version in like 10 years, so it's gonna be weird.
So I'm specifically looking forward to Sonic X because Kayla and I have already agreed we're going to watch it together. So it's nice to have a little bonding activity with your partner.
Do some reaction videos.
Oh God, no.
For me, there's the garden variety good stuff. Oh, Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Advance games. Yeah, that'll all be good. But I am mostly looking forward to Sonic the Comic.
Oh yeah.
Because I have some idea what to expect, but I know it's going to be crazy, and there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff to cover there. I am quite sure.
There are still a strong contingent of people that are adamant that Sonic the Comic is universally better than Archie Sonic. And I think, given what I have read of it, it makes sense to say that Sonic the Comic is definitely more consistently good, especially in the early parts. It's like with Archie Sonic, like once you get to Flynn's Run, it almost feels like a completely different series in some ways. Whereas Sonic the Comic does not feel like a different series, but is also good. So I am excited to see that as well.
Okay.
I'm not excited to edit more fucking comic panels, but
Well, you have a while to prepare to mentally prepare for it.
We'll burn that bridge when we train cross it. That doesn't work.
All right.
Can you tell we're getting tired tonight, folks?
It is almost 1:00 in the morning. I have just two simple questions.
Alrighty.
One, I'll end off with the kind of more big question. So one is, what are our favorite characters?
That's a tough one.
I guess I don't know if I want to limit it just to game characters or to just characters in general, because that also includes Archie.
I am a stand for Honey and Bunny.
Fair enough. I'm very partial. Right now, at least to Tails and Bunny.
I mean, I think my opinions I've already made known pretty well. I mean, I am a sucker for the underdogs, so Antoine.
Of course, Antoine's a good
love
choice.
Antoine, and then on the flip side, I really like Snively.
Okay.
Also, see, I can't just pick a few though, because
Yeah, I'm struggling with this too, because I'm saying I like Honey because she's an obscure character that I think is cute, but it's also that in the games, it's like, who's my favorite Sonic game character at this point? It's like, it's probably Knuckles, and I know that it's Knuckles for Lauren too, but
It's interesting because I think Tails is more, because I have enough experience with the later games. Plus, I really like Tails in the second Sonic movie.
yeah.
But I also really like Knuckles in that movie because they basically made him into a Klingon, and I love me some Star Trek.
Well, and we can see how our opinions change across the eras. We can probably do this for each of them.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea to do this for each of them. But yeah, I gotta love Tails. He's just a little bro, and I love him. He's adorable.
Yeah, we'll see if you feel that way after Forces.
And I had the comics in mind.
Right.
But yes, you are right that my boy Knuckles is great. I like playing him in the games.
In the games.
Yes. So sad. What have you done, Penders? That might be one of my least favorite Penders things. But there is a character that I can actually say is my favorite in all media, and that is Dr. Ivo Robotnik, of course.
Oh, yeah. I want to throw Robotnik onto mine as well.
It's hard. This is part of the problem because we think of things like that, but it's like it feels like it's a given. It
does feel like a given. I think that's
Still
why
worth
I
saying.
didn't think of it. It is definitely worth saying. Robotnik always steals the show. Even when
There's
he's not
not-
talking in the classic games, he still
There's not
steals
been
the
a single
show.
version of Robotnik we have disliked.
Yeah, no, Robotnik is always good. And I got to agree. I think overall, like, across all media, my favorite character has to be Robotnik.
He's just so iconic. He's just one of the best villains, period.
Right. I guess I should have worded it that way. Like, an overall favorite character, and then a favorite character from the games, and, like, specifically the Archie comics.
It's still hard to say because Robotnik
It
is also heavily based on the interplay between him and other characters.
It
it's
is.
like,
But I think that's still why it works out that he's the best in all media, because he gets that good interplay between all the characters in the different media.
Well, we'll be able to at some point rank different versions of characters across different iterations, so that'll be fun.
That'll be fun, yeah.
Yeah, I am a sucker for ranking things because these off-the-cuff sort of opinions, I just say things, but probably if I actually took the time to think it out, it would shake out differently.
Okay.
Well, it's like you do just a Knuckles ranking tier, so it's like you have like Sonic Adventure 1 Knuckles at a certain point, and then like Sonic 06 Knuckles is much lower than that. Pender's Knuckles is of course bottom tier, but then like you know, the two instances of Baller's Knuckles that we ever get are pretty alright, so you know.
Even different versions in the comic. It's funny.
Baller's writes Knuckles completely different from Pender's. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh yeah, I had one more question.
Yeah.
It is kind of a given. This is specifically games. What were our favorite games? Like maybe one or two favorite games.
I am always gonna be a sucker for Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I think it's too good. Except that they don't refill your rings on the boss of Death Egg Zone 2. That's annoying. But
I wish I liked Sonic 3 more than I actually do.
no, I know that you were a Sonic 2 man. I know
Yes,
that.
I absolutely loved Sonic 2, and I gotta say Sonic 2 and Sonic the Fighters.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bruce. But I mean, if you like Sonic 2, then good. I'm glad you like Sonic 2.
Sonic 2 is a perfectly acceptable choice. We don't even need to patronize him over this. Lots of people like 2 better than 3, and I understand why, because the level design makes 2 more accessible than 3 in a lot of ways.
Right. Yeah, my biggest problem with 3 is its level design. I think its levels are overly long, and the game itself is overly... Granted, I think part of my problem with 3 is also the way we did the episode, that we didn't split 3 and Knuckles up. But anyway, no, just my biggest problem when comparing 2 to 3 is just the levels in 2 just feel so much more speed-oriented than they do in 3.
They're brisk, yeah.
Yeah, they feel much more like I can hop into 3, play a few levels, and then hop out. Or did I say 2 or 3?
You said 3. I think you meant 2.
I meant 2. With 3, I feel like I need to sit down and like I play one level. I'm like, damn, I'm done. I've played enough.
So, yeah, this is just a difference. Obviously, it's like an opinion, but a difference of taste, if you will, also, because despite Sonic games being about speed centrally, they've never been all about speed and nothing else.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially, I think,
the classic era, especially.
Yes, that's true. They definitely leaned into it a lot more when Boost comes around.
Right.
Woo! Feeling good!
But I think especially in Sonic 3, because you've got Sonic, who, certainly Sonic is about speed, but you've also got 2 other characters you can play as. Tails, who can explore whoever the heck he wants, and Knuckles, who has little hideaways, and even special parts of levels made just for him.
And to be fair, I'd probably like the game a little bit more if I'd actually played the Knuckles part, which I completely forgot to.
Yeah, the Knuckles campaign is slightly different.
Right.
Sonic Origins Plus, order now.
They're
They're adding Knuckles Roots to CD.
not.
I have no idea what that means.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
But I like long-spanning adventures. I am a sucker for RPGs. I think you are too.
Yes,
but
I do love me a good RPG. I just finished most of Xenoblade.
But when we cram it all into 1 week, it creates problems.
Yeah,
no,
well,
that's a recipe for disaster.
Especially with by that point, I was already starting to put the games off until like a couple days before, and then panic play them, which I'm working on not doing for the adventure era. But that was I think, and maybe my issue with Sonic 3, because I played Sonic 2 like a couple weeks before we even covered it, and maybe I had a much breezier time with the game. So maybe that's why I enjoyed it more than Sonic 3, because I think I literally beat Sonic 3. Like I played through most of it on stream on our other server, but I don't think I finished the story. I think it got like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, I need to go to bed. And I think I literally beat the final boss like a couple hours before we recorded.
Yeah.
So that's my fault.
I get where you're coming from.
And I'll admit that's my fault. I shouldn't have done that. That was really stupid.
Well, let's be clear. We are committing to lowering the amount of fatigue we face for these games in the adventure, and I think that's going to improve the quality of our show.
It'll improve the quality of the show, and it'll also make playing the games a lot easier, especially with like Adventure 1 and 2, because it's going to be, we are covering one or two stories per episode instead of entire games. Because I think if we covered Adventure all in one episode, I would probably kill myself. I don't want to be a drama queen, but that would drive me insane.
It would be rough, yeah.
Sonic 3 is definitely a good game. It's not the Sonic game the classic Sonic game I was looking for. Sonic 2 filled that itch much more.
We don't need to tiptoe around it. You like 2 better.
That's perfectly fair.
Sonic the Fighters, I think, is, if anything, not even because it's a fighting game, because as I mentioned earlier, I'm dog shit at fighting games, but I think I love that game more for its tone, its aesthetic, its soundtrack.
It's containing my wife, yeah.
It containing Devin's wife. I do want to give Sonic R an honorable mention, because I was actually decent at that game, and it also has a great aesthetic and chef's kiss music.
Oh yes. I was gonna say. Oh yeah. So yeah, I mean, with any of these questions, I can't just give a straight single answer.
Well, that's why I said like 1 or 2, maybe 3 games.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is probably my favorite, actual full on, but the other games sort of more just simple fun, if you will. I'm not as partial to Sonic the Fighters. I do like Sonic the Fighters.
That's fair.
Quite a bit, but honestly, button mashing can only do so much for me.
That Metal Sonic fight is kind of, if you don't know what you're doing, it's pretty hard.
Yeah, Sonic R though, I'm in agreement there.
Yes,
that's just a good time. Just to pick up and listen to those sick tunes.
I've even picked it up again somewhat recently, just because I didn't know what to play and I wanted to play something.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up for me as far as favorite games.
Cool.
Well, then I think that means we've covered everything we were set to, yeah?
I do believe so.
Yeah, I think that covers it.
Alright, well, then, I would like to say that next time on Deep Dive Zone, we are finally going to be talking about Sonic's story in Sonic Adventure, complete with the new secret party member that definitely didn't appear in any episodes before this one. Don't go back and check, shut up. But if you enjoyed this episode, you can check all of our social media presences on screen here, and you can also share, comment, like, and subscribe if you enjoyed. And with all that said, we are done here tonight. I hope you all have a great night. We'll see you next week. Take care.